Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Draw Me Anything. I'm Jason, and today I'm speaking with one of my favorite cartoonists and people. I'm actually it's strange to be doing this virtually because we just had lunch in Baltimore in person last week. But, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Kevin Cal Callaher. Welcome, Kev. How are you, Cal?
Thanks, buddy. Great to be. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. I've been looking at your book for
Oh,
the past week. I've been flicking through this book, Daggers Drawn, which is 35 years of cartoons of yours in The Economist.
mm.
Of course, you've been a cartoonist for The Economist for a lot longer than that now. You're coming up on nearly 50 years.
Yeah. 2028 will be my
Wow.
50th year with The
That's
Economist.
crazy. That's
Yeah.
crazy. I was writing yesterday to people on my Substack about the fact that it's not just your consistency; it's the longevity. There's this
Mm.
thing with editorial cartoonists. I guess for the longest time, I always saw editorial political cartoonists, especially when I was growing up, as just part of the furniture. Like
Mm.
open the paper and they're there every morning, and they're just a part of your life. They're part of the tapestry of everything. And it's one of those jobs that, unlike a lot of other jobs where people jump around, they move, they try something else, editorial cartoonists will stay in the same job for decades at a time. For particularly in the 20th century and early parts of the 21st. And it's extraordinary that you've been in The Economist for nearly 50 years. That's incredible.
It's silly.
And
It's
you were at the Baltimore Sun for how long?
like 31 years.
31 years.
31 years. I mean, this is crazy because I think I'm only 16. I don't know how that happened, right? But here's one of the things you described about longevity and why that's kind of like a quirk
Mm,
of the editorial cartoons, but also to me is one of for the cartoonists, the way that we grade our favorite people in the craft. Okay. Whether it's editorial cartoonists or gag cartoonists and strips that you did for a long time,
mhm.
is that we go on an understanding that it's more important to have the high batting average. So I'm going to use a baseball metaphor here rather than be a home run hitter. Because if you're a home run hitter, anybody in a year should be able to do 10 really good cartoons, right? If you're going to do 200, 250, 10 should be really good. And
Mm,
those are the ones that people enter into contests. So the
mm,
contests don't always tell the full story of who's really doing good work. Because for
mm.
us, the people who have the high batting average are the most important people. They're the ones who get on base every day. They're not hitting home runs, but they're hitting singles, doubles. And I tell folks that on a bad day for me is when I hit a bunt single where I barely get on base, but at least I get on base. That's the idea. So consistency is the hardest bit, I think, in our craft, right? To
Yeah.
be able to do it day in, day out. And I'm going to just take another small anecdote is that
No, please.
if people, say, oh, becoming a cartoonist must be really difficult. I go, no, no, no. Becoming a cartoonist is easy. You just have to get a piece of paper. You get your pen and pencil. You can do stick figures and put a word balloon in there and so on. And that day, someday you become a cartoonist. The hard part is retiring as a cartoonist because then you have to do 10,000 original cartoons, right? So that's the difference.
I love that. I
Yeah.
I remember that's so funny. You just reminded me of something. Um, when you and I were in Columbus, Ohio in 2018, maybe 19,
Mm.
2019. Um, it was the AAEC conference, which was paired with the CXC Cartoon Crossroads Columbus Festival, the Billy Island. And you were awarded the Rex Babbitt, I think,
Oh, yeah.
by the
Mm.
AAEC. It's a very, for people who don't know, it's a very coveted award. It's a big
Mm.
award from the, especially it's awarded from the other editorial cartoon. It's a big, an honor. But you had spoken when you accepted your award. I do remember you talking about this idea of being a cartoonist versus for time as a cartoonist, or even
Yeah.
as the consistency of having
Yeah.
to show up every day. And when it was, I'm blanking on who presented it to you. Refresh my idiotic
I
memory.
think it was
Ladies and
Jack
gentlemen.
Omen.
It was Jack Oman, yes.
Yeah.
And another great Substack, by the way, people. Go and subscribe to Jack Oman. Um, and yeah, he was saying that you actually care. That was a big piece of it. He said you can tell how much you care. You're not being cynical. You're not being dismissive.
Mm-hmm.
You're not belittling people. You're not being high-minded and trying to be clever. You actually care, and you can tell. You can tell in
Mm-hmm.
your cartoons that you care, which is that's a big deal. It's very easy to get very cynical now. It's very easy to just be lowest common denominator and just go for the gut, and
Mm-hmm.
you really care.
Mm.
What's your secret? How are you not a ball of pessimism?
Yeah, I know. Oh boy. Well, it's really hard. I mean, this time is the most volcanic in my career, and maybe the most
Yeah.
volcanic in a century. And I'm not just talking about, of course, in U.S. politics. Everyone's familiar. In fact, around the world, people are pulling their hair out because of U.S. politics. But globally, you
Yeah.
know, the politics in Germany and France and the UK right now are just explosive, and
Mm,
uh, and then the upheaval in so many societies. And we had this meeting last week of all these who's who of bad guys in China. Um,
mm.
the
The villains.
world balance is shifting. More tensions. We have an erratic person who's got a nuclear weapons at their disposal. So yeah, this is crazy time. I guess part of the thing, Jason, is that always I think I just like you and I are talking here. I want to connect with the person, and one of the challenges for anybody in our profession is to make what I call an effective cartoon. That's the most important thing. The most effective cartoon, and an effective cartoon is one that connects with people. They don't have to agree with you, but you've got them in. And so sometimes in the political cartoonists, they can create terrible responses to their cartoons because they either use the wrong metaphor, the caricature is too hot, the subject matter is very delicate and they didn't handle it in a delicate fashion.
Mm,
Those cartoons are ineffective cartoons, right? Because it gets people angry rather than understanding the point you're having to say. So the point becomes the biggest part of the whole experience. So you do have to have a kind of a voice in the back of your head of what the audience is like. Now, having said that,
mm,
when I came to the US, I lived in the UK for 11 years, worked on a whole bunch of papers over there, very different dynamic. But here in the US, you come to the Baltimore Sun, they have one newspaper for the whole city
mhm,
at the time. And
mm,
so it was the left and the right, the high earners, the low earners. Everybody was pulling from the same trough at Baltimore Sun.
mm,
Well, every cartoon you do is going to tick somebody off. So it's not like you're going to please everybody, but you want to do something that people get engaged with. You have to engage people, and so I
mm,
guess that's always been in my mind. And I'm going to flip this back to you, Jason, because I'm curious. Because
mm,
if you do stand up, right?
mhm,
And
yeah.
winning over a room, working that thing. Is there a crossover between that kind of experience and that kind of tension with the way you do cartoons?
Yeah, there is. I did a show on Sunday nights, and it felt so the first time in a while. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's because of this climate we're in, but there was a moment there where there was a real disconnect. There was a feeling of disconnection, and it was harder to get people, like get them, in the room. And now there's some kind of, it just felt like camaraderie almost. Like everyone was with me. They were like going with the ideas and they were invested in what I was saying and thinking. And I think with cartoons, with the cartoons that I do, the people who are invested in them are really invested and they're finding
Mm,
their tribe, they're finding their people, right? And the people who don't, it's the other way around. I mean, it's the complete other end of the spectrum. They're not just content to not engage, they have to tell you about it and they have
mm,
thoughts and ideas. And as you know, I mean, I started out doing editorial cartoons when I was like 19 and for the local papers. And people will write letters in. They're very animated when they don't
Mm-hmm.
agree with something. They're less likely to write a letter in if they like something. They're not going to put a stamp on an envelope if they like a
Big,
thing.
the big thumbs up, right? No
Yeah,
doubt.
and you never hear from them.
Yeah.
Whereas if they don't, you're going to hear from them.
Yeah.
It's stacked in in the negative, which is what social media is now. Which is if it's negative, you're going to hear from it.
Yeah.
But I think that engagement, getting people, winning people in the room, and as you know, because you're a performer as well, you do have to read the room. You have to get a gauge. You have to get a sense. It's almost like a subconscious sort of sense of reading. And I don't know how you do it now, but there because everyone's attention is sort of hijacked, it is harder to
Mm.
get a read, an accurate read
Mm-hmm.
on where you're directing people's attention, where you're directing people's minds. Because that's a lot of what comedy is directing
Mm.
people's thoughts and
Mm-hmm.
minds. And you're kind of, conducting them in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when you do speaking and performance and you have this in the back of your head, you're like, are they paying attention? Did they listen to that? Did they process that? Are they comprehending? Um, so yeah, it's complicated. I think it's
Mm.
complicated.
Yeah. Well, you talked about telling jokes and so on, and one of the things when I describe one of the powers of cartoons that most people don't know about,
Mm,
it's about the composition of the cartoon because
yes.
that is our timing. Like a joke, you have timing in your jokes. Our timing is leading the reader's eye to go in a
Hmm.
certain order, and then the punchline, the delivery, and
Yep.
you hide the punchline, and so they have that aha moment,
Hmm.
and that sense of discovery on their part. I
Yep.
think is also the connection you get with your viewers because they feel, oh, I got that cartoon, bring
Yeah.
me another one, right? And
And you
it's
didn't
it's
you didn't spoon feed it to them.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
They
yeah,
had to
because
figure it
right,
out.
yeah, yeah, because sometimes you do these big strong images that seem kind of maybe spoon fed, but they grab you in a different way. But the best ones where you use that visual timing with a bit of payoff.
Yeah, I always anyone who ever asks me if there's any similarities, any correlation between writing jokes for stage and writing New Yorker cartoons or editorial cartoons, that is what it is. You're directing people's attention and their eye around an image using
Yeah.
composition, using things like negative space and solid,
Hmm.
and some people get very in the weeds about it with the Fibonacci, with the golden ratio.
Yeah.
Um, but there is a science to it. There is a science
Hmm.
to the art of cartooning, and a lot of that actually that was what a lot of the ones in this book.
Uh-huh.
I know probably the ones I'm talking about, but the ones that have a
Mm.
real effect, like a real punch. It's your everything in this composition, everything in this image is there on purpose. Every solid, every uh, the composition, the angles, the way your eye leads around the image, lands, and how the idea lands, and these other details and things like that. It's all like a perfectly constructed joke, and
Hmm.
it's harder than it looks. You think you can
Yeah.
do it. You see, it, you go, oh, I can do that, and then you start doing it. Like, 3 or 4 drafts in, you go, oh
Yeah.
crap, I can't.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
I? And it's
Yeah.
and it's hard to unless you do it. It's hard to describe the
Mm.
difficulty of that craft.
Mm.
Um, on top of that, I did want to ask you about this because I found this fascinating. When we were having lunch last week,
Mm.
you brought something up that was really fascinating to me. And last night I went to an Al Hirschfeld's exhibition opening at the Algonquin,
Mm.
and
Oh
he
yeah.
had these, those beautiful
Mm.
arts and leisure style caricatures of,
Yeah.
big celebrities, Broadway stars and movie stars, and he had all of this negative space. The balls on this guy, but he
Unbelievable.
had to earn that negative space. He had to earn the right to not have that space filled in with column inches, with words and other things and ads. And he had to work his way up to have that line economy.
Mm.
And you said when you started was it at the Economist in the UK when you first because
Mm.
they didn't have a cartoonist, you were the first cartoonist, and you had
Yeah.
to kind of convince them that
Mm.
there was value to having a cartoonist. The other piece of the value was that if you did have that square, that space, you had to make it look valuable
Mm.
and voluble. You had to fill you had to make it look like you'd really used the space, like cross
Yeah.
hatching and solids. And
Hmm.
can you talk to that a little bit? Because that really fascinated me. The fact that your
Oh.
style. derived kind of from earning your space.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Is that particularly bringing in Al Hirschfeld in comparison? And I've got some good Hirschfeld stories to tell you later.
I love
So,
those.
yeah, the Economist in those days was like reading the Bible. It was this gray, turgid text in there, and so the whole prospect of taking that space, not just for an image, they had one photo per section, but this was going to
Mm,
be a cartoon. And people, when people say cartoons, it often has a bit of a snicker and a sneer involved. It's not real art, right? Cartoons
right.
aren't really art, right? They're lowbrow. We're highbrow. Cartoons are lowbrow. New York Times doesn't have cartoons. New
No.
York Times is highbrow, cartoons are lowbrow. Anyways, so when you come into that environment, you've got a lot of convincing to do to, the art department, they're behind you, they're pulling for you, and they're your advocates in the room. But it's now you've got to provide, regular proof over and over again that those inches they've given away is valuable. It's been respected.
Mm,
So one of the ways that I, started to think of it is that if I did a cartoon that took me half an hour, they wouldn't respect that because
mm,
they're sitting there. They write. It takes them hours to write their articles. If some young kid comes in, hotshot kid comes in and spends a half an hour and then wants his money and go off into the pub, no, thank you, no. So I had to, give myself some work.
mm,
And I started to, I also, I'll add to that I was fascinated and interested in the early caricatures of, first of all, going back to Thomas Nast, who's,
mm,
famous for doing Boss Tweed and others, but they were kind of voluminous. The caricatures had a status and they had kind of weight to them. And I thought that
mm.
was so interesting. And then I saw the work of David Levine, who was
Yes. Oh
famously
my
at
God.
that time at the New York Review of Books. I think it was the
Yep.
name of
That's
the
right.
publication, and he was doing these spectacular, things that I was
Portraits.
aspiring to, and I couldn't do, to be honest. But I was aspirational, and because it took me a long time to do those things. And I remember in the course of my first 5 years, and even then, every week you didn't know if it was the last week, right?
Mm,
And but I would have landmark pieces through that time where I really crushed it. I used the space properly. It was on a subject of important people,
mm,
several, thumbs ups from different editors. And I think over time, you kind of won them over. And another important bit, Jason, that I'm sure you know about is that it's not enough to be a good artist and funny and all that stuff. You have to be easy to get along with. You have to be, if you're a jerk,
mm.
people don't want to have you. Their lives are too complicated. They don't want another jerk in the world. So you
Right.
have to be nice. You got to be respectful. You have to be engaging,
Hmm.
and then show that you have the chops. In my case, the political chops, the understanding. I'm not just an artist. That I had the comprehension of the issues of the day, and I was committed in that direction. So you
Mm.
earn respect, and then once you have this respect, then they give you more room.
That's so interesting. Earning the respect, yeah, as a person, not just as an artist or as
No.
a name on a page. That's the other piece to it that I always think about, especially with you. You have such a distinctive style. Um, your work feels like you. It looks and feels like you, the person. It's a very authentic
Wow.
voice.
You
in
just
the, in
got
the
white
sense,
hair and all that
yeah.
stuff.
No,
All the
it's the
characters.
whimsy, you know. But it's
Ah,
also the you can be serious. You can
yeah.
be very, you have this ability to kind of switch between silly and very very serious and deadly funny, but very, very like really land a point.
Mm,
Which I think not every some people will have one or the other, or it's a difficult balance because people think all cartoons are funny, which is a
mm,
misconception, obviously. And I had some comments in one of my previous cartoon posts on Substack about political cartoons.
mm,
I think I had mentioned you having left the Baltimore Sun, and I sort of alluded to the fact that and Tellers had left the Washington Post under circumstances that were similarly like just chilling and same for the Pittsburgh Post Gazette in 2018 with Rob Rogers. Was it 18?
Something like that.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and someone said in the comments, "Oh, cartoons are just entertainment. They're just entertainment. They don't move the needle. They're not journalism. They're not, and I really pushed back, and because I was like, oh, okay, then we'll just ignore the Boss Tweed moment with Thomas Nash. We'll just
Mhm.
ignore this. We'll ignore the Charlie Hebdo. We'll ignore everything. Zunar and all these cartoonists being arrested and having their hands beaten in Syria and cartoonists having to be exiled to other countries because their cartoons are galvanizing people in the Arab Spring, like Nadia Chiari in Tunisia, and these cartoonists who genuinely have an effect on the populace because of the power of cartoons, because they're not big chunks of written text. Many times they don't even have any text. You don't need to be literate to understand the power of this visual medium, and that terrifies people in power because that kind of influence is very powerful. So they're not entertainment, and I really took offense at that. I, as a cartoonist, but also just on behalf of people who, like you, put so much thought into the idea, the message, and then using this medium to sort of purvey that message, to share it. I think it's really important.
Mm. Well, Chancellor, I know but the population may not know. You were president for 2 terms of the
Mm,
National Cartoonist Society, and the American National Cartoonist Society embodies a whole different types of cartoons, right? So you have your comic strip guys, right? You had your gags, comic books. Did you have comic book
yeah,
guys there?
comic books, illustrators, yeah,
Animation,
everyone. Yep.
all that stuff, right? And it's a real hodgepodge. And you also did like an amazing job. I'm sure all the people who know you here from your Substack can imagine what a great president you would be. So
Thank you.
the thing was, what's so interesting of my whole career is that when somebody hear the word cartoon,
Mm,
different images come up in their mind what that is. They might think
mm,
you do, comic books or your animation because they all call themselves cartoonists.
yeah.
And so I've had to often, more specialize that, okay, I'm a cartoonist is just satire,
Mm,
political satire. And then suddenly you can imagine you can see their eyes going click, 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 click. Oh,
yeah.
you're in a different place. So you're right. And I think that, this whole notion of trying to get respect as a profession has been
Mm,
very interesting over time. And I know that, I've been I'm kind of an elder statesman in this group, and I feel now that
mm,
respect has been earned. Um,
yeah.
and then also, I got a reputation around the world. So when I travel, people kind of treat you in that sort of way. But I know that for everyone starting off has got that same challenge. And
Yeah.
in fact, I'm glad I wasn't around. Glad the internet wasn't around when I started because I was so rubbish for the first 20 years. I would have never recovered from all the humiliation I would have gotten.
I love that you still use British terms sometimes because I know you live there and your wife is
Uh,
British. But there was a point where you said, when you were living in the UK, you said something the other day, and I was like, oh, he still uses British terms. Like, I'm so rubbish. Like, that's not.
yeah, so rubbish.
Americans say trash. Oh, I was trash. I
Yeah.
also trash. Um, there is an interesting the thing that I find interesting about you. And by the way, to everyone, get your ideas ready for the draw me anything portion. Any ideas you have for
Right.
requests of stuff you'd like Cal and I to draw? We're going to flip the cameras in about 5 minutes. It's that you have this across the pond. You have this capacity to understand, having lived in a different country and under a different Westminster system of government. You have
Mhm.
this ability to compare and contrast. I know there's a lot of Americans who have never left America. They don't know how good they have it. They don't
Mhm.
know these differences between the political systems or the cultures or things like that, where there's people being, arrested for posting things on social media now in the UK, and they don't have a Second Amendment. They don't have the documents that we have in the US. They don't have the
Yeah.
protections. We have our own problems here, obviously,
Yeah.
but a lot of people don't realize the differences. They kind of might hear a tidbit here or there on TikTok or Instagram, or they might read an article, or they have a friend come to town from or meet someone from another country, but without living there, without being in it, and then also having to interpret it in cartoons like you did, I
Mhm.
don't think we get the same level of contrast and understanding and sort of comprehension of like how how unique this experience is in
Yeah.
America. You
Mm.
know, and you have that. You're almost like a European in that
Mm.
sense. You're a
Yeah.
European American.
Yeah, it was so funny. I think toward the end of my time there, one of my great achievements,
Mm.
achievement to me, nobody else would know this achievement, but achievement to me was I got the distinct feeling that later in my career there, that people didn't know I was an American,
Wow.
right? And so that, it's a combination when you're working in another culture, you just don't do political analysis, but you have to use all the cultural metaphors and they understand the jingo and the lingo and all of the subtleties of humor and
Mm.
all of these various elements and draw them in effortlessly, right? So that's very organic. And that, to me, when I was achieving that, I realized what a great understanding I had of the country because I really felt that I felt like I was part of. I could have easily have lived there the rest of my life. My brother lives, came there when I was there for a different reason. He still lives there,
Right.
but we had this great opportunity to come to the U.S. That we took advantage of. But
Mm.
yeah, I mean, it's that's one of the big challenges for us. And I remember talking to you about this some years back, Jason. You know, being Australian, coming to America, same
Mm.
same sort of issues. People just assume because you speak English, no problem. Or, by the way, you're Australian, you adjust to us. Our way is the king. And the thing is that you have a whole life, you have a whole personal experience that you're bringing to bear here. And most of the people who operate here have no idea or aren't even interested in what it
Mm.
was like for your experience coming before. So, for you to achieve, and you have achieved a real sense of place in this culture
Mm.
is a really big deal. It's much more than just your average. I mean, it's hard enough to become a cartoonist and a stand-up comedian, but you came from Australia as well.
Yeah, and I have to confess, in Australia, the exposure you probably maybe you had this in the UK as well when you lived there, but the exposure of American culture in these other places, like especially in the Commonwealth, in Canada, the UK, India, Australia, there's these we get the worst of it. We would be drip fed the news of the bad stuff. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
erroneously assuming that Americans are a bunch of myopic parochial xenophobes, and it's just like it's not true at all,
Right.
and that they're all that. It's a difficult, like my sister and I have these arguments sometimes, but it's difficult to explain that there is a wider aperture.
Mm,
If you build out the aperture and you live here, you do see
mm,
more than just that very narrow
yeah,
lens of one piece of America. There's a much
yeah,
bigger part to it, which is the whole
mm,
reason when people say, "Oh, you're going to go back to Australia now that Trump's," I was like, "No,
yeah, yeah,
you don't
yeah,
understand. It's hard to
yeah,
explain." They're like, "You're
yeah.
crazy." I'm like, "You don't know what I know."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No
Yeah.
kidding.
And before we flip the cameras, because and I love talking while I'm drawing as well. It's one of my favorite.
Yep,
I don't know. I feel like I focus differently.
yep,
Um, the other thing is figuring out the sense of humor. It's a puzzle, and there
yep.
are universal elements, as you know, with surprise and with all these
Hmm.
setups and word economy and phonetics and all these things.
Hmm.
But there is a different sense of humor in the UK as there is to
No kidding.
America. In the same, it's the reason that a lot of people go to Edinburgh for the Fringe and they kill here, and then they go there, and the audience is like, "What?" It's very American
Yeah,
style comedy, and vice versa. They'll come here and tell these,
yeah,
British style stories and drop in these little bits of business, and people here are like, "Is he going to do some jokes?"
yeah.
It's
Right.
just you
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
figure out the
yeah,
mechanics of the differences between the senses of the humor culturally.
yeah. No, you're absolutely right about that. In fact, the cartoon I did for The Economist this last week
Yeah.
used a much more English scenario, even though it was a global cartoon. It's about the meeting that I discussed earlier about in Beijing and this had Kim Jong Un and Putin and Modi of India and Xi getting a set of darts out, and they're saying
So
and
this
a
one, yeah.
fancy game of darts, lads, and sort of thing you might say in a pub.
Yeah.
but then behind them is a cardboard figure of Donald Trump, and that's the thing
Right.
they're going to be throwing the darts at, right? But it was
Yeah.
that what resonated, for my, I'm sure from my British editors and others who might have seen it, is that that
Right.
was a much more, that was not what you have said in an American bar, right? That's more like a thing that would have been said in an English pub.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, it's not that they don't have darts here. It's just not that it's part of the culture. It's not like
Yeah,
shooting game pool or something like that. Yeah.
that's
It's,
right.
I saw there was another one of yours with darts. I think it was a tariffs cartoon, just like
Oh yeah,
random
hundreds of
darts.
darts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who am I gonna give tariffs to today? Just like these
yeah,
random things. Because it felt so random. It felt like a game of darts. It's just like
yeah.
hitting how did you come up with 33.1% on the penguin? Like what? Oh, ChatGPT probably, but yeah,
Yeah.
just all
Hmm.
right, so I'm going to flip the camera now.
Yeah.
We've got a few little DMA requests coming in. I'm gonna. This is my drawing board here. You and I both. I mean, you're one of the few people I know still using dip pen and ink like I do. Um,
Okay.
I'm using for those wondering. I use Higgins waterproof ink. That way, when it dries, I can put a wash over it without it smudging. I know that Barry Blitt, I saw, were we talking about this? Where Barry Blitt sort of adds wa- a, um, he mixes waterproof with non-waterproof to let the line bleed, which
Oh.
is
Oh,
a
really? Okay.
curious thing. Yeah, for when he adds the wash. It's an interesting, I never really understood. And then I tried it. I was like, oh, it is an interesting thing. It's sort of his signature now. It looks like his, when you see
All
it,
right.
you can't unsee it, once you see it.
I'm gonna try
Okay.
to zoom in my camera somehow. Do you know how to zoom in?
I am. I think you have to physically move the camera, but I
Okay.
can see your page. I can see your page.
Well,
let
that
you
will
know if.
probably be big enough, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I'll
We've
just have to
had.
draw really big.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Let's
Well,
get a
hold on.
sense of
You
scale.
keep on talking. I'm gonna move this thing
Sure.
down, see if I can get
Okay.
bigger.
Um, yeah, so I'm looking through the chat here, and everyone, be sure to put in. This is the DMA portion where it's draw me anything, so you can request things in the chat that you'd like us to sketch while we're having a chat. We've got Hugh Walker has said a MAGA pigeon at an anti-Trump demonstration. There's a pigeon theme that seems to run through these. There's a lot of pigeons that
Oh yeah.
end up popping up in these requests. Probably because I'm often drawing pigeons in New York City.
Yes,
Uh,
that's true, and they're very good pigeons as well. Your pigeons.
thank you. You end up just absorbing their personality sometimes. Um, yeah, so I've been using this, and I know we might have touched on it at lunch. There's something about the skill that you have to kind of cultivate. You have to kind of practice really not having an undo button available to you at all times.
Right.
When you do, it's one thing to do pencils and lay down some pencils and erase and figure
Right.
out, your layout, but um, it's another to kind of seed, as in like I think CEDE seed, some of the um, I guess chaos to the pen, to the dip pen. Let it
Yeah,
just
yeah,
kind
that's
of
right.
do what it's gonna do.
Yes, that's right. I'm getting my ink open here. Yeah, no, you're
Nice.
absolutely right. And that's kind of the fun of it, right? Is that
Yeah.
well, everybody thinks you know as a creator, you know where the line is going. You're just
Mm.
guessing. No, I think it's gonna work if I do it here. And it's
Yeah.
just full of it's like a giant educated guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is hard too.
I
To,
gotta tell you, is that doing this is so much fun, right? Just doing this because we yeah uh, um and so this is what we've always wanted to do since we were little kids was draw, right? And somebody is
yep.
actually allowing us to do it. But what we're doing here reminds me because of kind of the improv nature of it
Yeah.
of when I was first time drawing on the streets. Now, did you ever do like street? I mean, no, you do like
Oh yeah.
caricature things now.
Yeah.
Where did where did you get on the streets?
So in Fremantle, which is a sister city to Perth, it's about an hour south. I used to work for the Fremantle Herald, which was the first. It was a series of six papers. There were weeklies, but there were six of them. So the Melville City Herald, Coburn City Herald, Fremantle Herald, the Freo Rooster, the Perth Voice. So I do editorial cartoons for all of those. And then on my lunch break or on the weekends, I would go down there, and there was like a town square in Fremantle. They had a big statue of Bon Scott from AC/DC because he's from Fremantle,
Oh
and
boy.
lead singer of yeah, R.I.P. Yeah, and another big statue of John Curtin, who was the wartime prime minister in Australia, and I would sit by those statues and I would draw people. I'd do caricatures of people in the
Yeah.
square there, and I know you did the same thing in the UK, but it was a good way to make your bones as a cartoonist to figure out, there's pressure to it. Uh, there's sort of a spontaneity to it that you have to figure out. It's sink or swim, right? You have to be able to
Yeah.
lay down a line and be confident with it. Otherwise,
Yes.
they're not going to sit there and wait for you to erase and try again and do it differently. Yeah, did you find that was a good way for you to practice sort of speed and confidence?
Well, yeah, the my first experience at college, right? And they, they back in the 70s, back in the ancient 70s when I was kind of exploring this craft,
Yeah,
that there's no courses, there's no classes to become a cartoonist, right?
of course. Yeah.
So as a result, you kind of be self-taught, and I would go to, you might go to the seaside, and you might see somebody doing these caricatures live, right? And I wanted
Mm,
to do caricatures, so I decided I was going to go out in the street and start drawing caricatures, right? So I go to this busy part of Cambridge, Massachusetts,
right.
lots of people, and I set up, and I figured I couldn't charge anybody. I mean, come on, just starting off. So I then set a thing out that said caricatures free,
Mhm.
right? Well, of course, instead of getting people who really wanted to have the caricatures done, I got every proselytizer, every drunk, every person
Oh
there
God.
would come and hang out, and my work was it was terrible, And I was actually doing like we did doing here. I'll do it with these pens, try to do a
Hmm.
caricature, and of course, at the beginning you make mistake after mistake after
Of
mistake,
course.
and that's what you're doing. You're learning from your mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the thing that I remember was that you have to be fearless. You have to, be prepared to get um, all sorts of, and rejection and people
Right.
sneering a little bit at your drawing that you can't do and
Yeah.
stuff like
Well,
that. Right.
I think that's right. The sneering is one of the hardest things when they go, "Oh, that doesn't look like me," or they
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
they say, "Oh no, that's you've drawn me wrong," or "My nose isn't that big." It's bearing that rejection, but it's
Yeah.
also not being a perfectionist, not being too precious
Yeah.
about your work and about your line, and developing a bit of an armadillo shell, about that
Yeah.
sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
the interesting thing I've found about live drawing, I've been doing it since 2004, so whatever that is, 21 years. I do it a lot now, a lot more now. And people seem, when I say a lot more, I mean, I seem to notice that while there are these AI things that people could just stand in front of and have a photo taken of them, and then it
Yeah.
spits out an AI caricature of them, which are very popular, and they are taking work away from a lot of cartoonists,
Right.
live cartoonists.
Oh, yeah.
There is still that interaction, that human interaction of sitting down in front of someone and them talking to you, say, "Hey, where you from? What do you do?" All that kind of stuff. I think that you can't really replicate with an AI. I mean, even if it's a
Yeah.
chatbot, it's not really going
Yeah.
to know. Oh yeah, I went to Europe once, or I did. Oh, I'm from Columbus too.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
that stuff. It's the extra stuff.
It is the extra stuff, and that's also it makes it worthy for you, but it also gives you the opportunity then to introduce very personal stuff inside of
Yeah,
the artwork, that kind of thing.
exactly,
And
exactly.
I
And
also
kind of build it in.
you probably have certain gigs you did that you have memories of. I had one in Richmond Park
Mhm.
in the UK, and I do this a little bit in the early days to earn a bit of cash, but it's also
Same.
like a good learning process. But one of the things that it taught me was at the beginning of drawing when I first
Mhm.
started, and that morning. I was, really having a hard time. But as the day went on,
Mm.
I got really good. And I realized that is that part of you get into a zone. You get like a baseball hitter gets into a winning hitting streak. Is that you get going. You spot bases much faster. You're just more acute. And then there comes the point when you're too tired and you can't draw
Uh,
anything because you're just it requires a lot of mental attention here. This is
yeah.
not too political, is it?
No, no, no,
Uh,
please. This is a Trump rally, so that's
I'm
great. I
sorry
love it.
about this.
Don't apologize. Oh my God. Don't dare apologize.
Yeah.
I'm doing one here where the pigeon is in favor of eating the dogs and eating the cats.
That's awesome. That is way too good. Oh, that's right. And then we should have a dog and a cat behind it with a knife and fork, ready to eat him. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a pigeon at the Trump rally.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so great. Look at the perspective on the poop on the ground. Look at that. That's
Well, there you
beautiful.
go. My
And
poop. I'm excellent at poops.
that's so
I mean,
funny.
that's
Um,
funny.
Caroline Roth in the chat. Caroline and Arnie Roth are watching.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Years years ago, she said, I wanted to figure out a way to do something like what you're doing with political cartoonists talking. I was going to call it out to lunch. It's a great idea. I love that. Out to
That's a
lunch.
good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's Caroline, and Arnold Roth, anyone who doesn't know, the work of Arnold Roth, I mean, do yourself a favor and Google it. It's
Mm,
brilliant. If you love the work of Ronald Searle or Gerald Scarfe or any of these cartoonists who have this beautiful line work, I mean,
yeah.
Arnie's up there with the best of the best.
Yeah.
His New Yorker covers, his gags, his illustrations, it's just beautiful work. It's some of the work that really got me interested in the New Yorker. And
Yeah.
he was the first New Yorker I met. Arnie and Caroline
Oh, really?
um, were living in. They still do live in the Upper West Side, and I was invited to go to their place. I was 20, I think 20, and so it was 20 years ago. Um, Paul Rigby had written ahead of my coming to America. I lived in Perth at the time, and had said to them, "Hey, my friend Jason's coming." He wrote to Pat Oliphant. He wrote to Arnie Roth. He wrote to Doug
Wow.
Gallo, and said, "Yeah, you should catch up with him, grab lunch, say hi, introduce yourself." And he did. It was incredible. And Arnie and Caroline were very generous, and we sat down and they were the first New Yorkers I ever met. And about a week later, I went to the Bunny Bash out in on Long Island with all the cartoonists. Did you ever do that? To the Bunny Bash?
No, I've never been. Never been.
Yeah, it was.
It started when I was thinking it was in the UK still.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. It did go back a long way. I know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Arnold is I mean he's also an ex-president of the National Cartoon Society. Um, he he also plays the alto sax. There's this interesting thing I've noticed with cartoonists. They either play music or have some kind of performance element to their
Mm.
work. Um, you are an amazing ventriloquist. I don't know if people
Am I?
know your work, but yes, with
Okay.
your incredible puppet there, your Muppet. I shouldn't call it a Muppet. I think that's trademarked, isn't it? That name. Uh, but it
Well, the
bells a
crumpet.
bunch. Crumpet, right?
That's a crumpet.
Uh, Crumpet, and yeah, and Arnold Roth plays incredible. I mean, he always played an incredible sax, and he was friends. One of his best friends coming up in Philly was Paul Desmond. And it's wild the people that he knew and or knows, and he and Caroline. I think Paul was the best man at their wedding. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, they have these musical ties, and their kids are musical, and um, yeah, and the grandkids. It's very interesting that's a thread that I notice.
Yes, the performing things. Well, I think that
Yeah,
maybe as we've kind of discovered before about that there's a performance element to what we do. And also there's
yeah,
this improv element because we have to come up with stuff, quickly. It uses all sorts of parts of our brain. Caricature is to me, a visual form of jazz. And
Yeah.
so um, that's a kind of a natural home for us to be able to do things that involve that same sort of improvisation. So I got to
Yeah.
tell you, it just came to me when we were talking about drawing live cartoons, right? I had a
Hmm.
situation where we were in Paris, my wife and I, and this must have been in the 80s.
Hmm.
And you remember there's Montmartre where all the
Of
caricatures are, right?
course.
The portrait
Glad
guys. It's
picture.
kind of
Yeah.
classic, right? Classic place. So I told my wife, hey, let's go there. I'd really like to see it. And
Yeah.
of course, this caricatures, I'm looking at his samples that he has, and he does
Yeah.
his pattern. He wants me to sit down and do the bit.
Mm.
And I said to him, I said, listen, I'm also a caricaturist. I do this stuff. How about we do this? You sit here, I'll sit over
Yeah.
there, and we will have a draw off. You draw me, I draw you. It'll bring a crowd, and then you can
Yeah.
just, you can do your stick with the crowd and see if you can get anybody, right? So he
Yep.
says, "You're on, mate." So we did this great draw off, and what was so funny was, of course, I'm you know, trying to be as wicked as possible. And then I noticed that across from me, he would have like a crowd of 5 or 6 people behind him laughing at what he was doing of me, which made me think, okay, buddy, let's dial this up. So it was really funny. Yeah. And I
Wow.
still
When
got
was
that
that?
caricature. Yeah, I still got that. That
You
was like
do.
in the 80s. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that's, I love that story. There's several reasons I love it. I was there, 2024, May of 2024. It was that Christmas of 23 and May of 24. And I went, both times I went to Poster Church. I went to, up in Montmartre where they have the square.
Right.
The portraitists, there's a lot more portraits these days, less caricaturists. It's
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
There's not as many caricaturists anymore. A lot of them are portraits and watercolors of, skylines and Paris icons and things like that. But when I first went, 2010, um, I I I sat down for a caricature, and I obviously didn't tell anybody I was a cartoonist because I was terrified. I felt like such a dilettante. I felt like such a
Right.
calling myself a caricaturist in that place. And I was
Right.
still pretty green, and I was like, "Well, I'm not going to tell them I'm a cartoonist."
Right.
And I did. I sat down, and there was this old guy. He looked like Gandalf. He had this big long beard, um, and he looked at me while I was being sketched by this younger cartoonist. And I couldn't obviously see the guy's what he was drawing, but as I'm being drawn, he noticed sticking out of my pocket, as I'm sure you always have. I had pens. I had drawing pens. Always
Yeah.
always carry a pen, and he pointed at the brush pen that I had. It was a Tombow, one of those double-ended, N15
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
Tombow markers, and he was like, "Oh, you're a," and he said in French, like asked if he's a caricaturist. He's
Right.
asking if I'm a caricaturist. I'm a cartoonist. I think he's a dessinateur, or whatever the term was, and I didn't quite know what he's asking, but I kind of was like, "Oh crap, you see my pen?" I was like, "No, no, 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 it's just a pen." He's like, I think you're an artist. You're a cartoonist." Anyway, long story short, uh, as the time went on, and while he was drawing, we had this conversation, and he eventually, I idiotically told him that I was the cartoon. I don't know
Oh,
what came over me,
right.
because you know what it was? I was watching the guy who was drawing me, and he had this face. He just,
Oh,
it was
yeah.
his eyebrows. He had a monobrow, and I
Yeah.
couldn't
Oh,
stop looking
boy.
at this face. And
Right, right, right,
my finger just like twitched. I was like, oh,
right.
I would kill to draw this guy. And sure enough, I did. I drew him while he was drawing me. I did the same. It's crazy that you said that, because that's the exact same thing that happened. Is
Right, right,
although
right.
the difference is we weren't sort of competing and drawing a crowd so much as me just like sheepishly sketching him while he professionally drew me. And when he showed me the drawing of me, I looked like Michael Bublé. I mean, I looked, I don't know what he was looking at, but I looked ridiculous. And when I showed him his, I think he was being very polite. I don't know if I did a very good job, but he, I think he was a bit offended. I don't know if he had been drawn before or what, but
Right.
yeah, he sort of wasn't totally clear. I mean, he was nice enough to hold it up, and I took a photo of him with it. But it was freezing cold. I mean, it was the middle of winter up there. It was ridiculous. My
Right.
hands were frozen. I'm drawing like crap. But yeah, I don't know that he liked it. I'll give you the tip. He didn't keep it. And so when I went back last year, I asked, hey, is this guy around? And I showed his photo to a bunch of cartoonists in the square. And I said, is this guy still around? He's like, oh, no, he moved out to Normandy.
Oh yeah.
He left. So I never got to meet up with him again. That was the first and last time I ever saw him.
Oh well. But you learn from those situations, don't you? Every single time it's an
Yeah,
adventure. And
it is. Yeah, it is an
well,
adventure.
I've
Yeah, I think that's true.
I got another drawing story,
Mm,
drawing
please.
live story. It just came to me. So I was in the UK, and they have a place on Trafalgar Square that the artists would kind of meet up, and uh, to be a bunch of chairs out near the National Portrait Gallery.
Mm,
And I said, I'm going to give this a go. So I packed up
mm,
everything. I lived in Brighton. It was about an hour from London. So took the long trip to London, went over there. I had, a little stool and all the stuff that you kind of need for this sort of thing. And I
mm,
asked the artist, there was about, I'm going to say five or six. And I think it was like, midday. So it wasn't like the highlight of what would normally be. If I could join them, and they said, well, you can for a little while, but there's another guy who's expected to come, and the police rule is that we could have six people here, but
mm.
once we get a seventh, then they move us all on. So
Oh,
so
okay.
our job is to police our numbers, that kind of thing. I said
So
fine, okay.
it's okay.
So I was the only caricaturist there. The rest were all these portrait guys.
Yeah.
And so I start drawing, and they could see that I was pretty good, and I was doing my stuff, and they were happy to have me there, and a bit of chat and all that sort of stuff. But then the other bloke showed up, and it was time for me to go, and I packed up, and they then told me another spot to go to, which was in Leicester Square. It was a
Oh
very
yeah.
busy place, right? But the
Sure.
problem with Leicester Square was the only place you could go. There was tons and tons of pigeons and trees above, so you had to have an umbrella to put over the artwork and the people who were posing, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't come equipped with all that stuff, so that didn't last very long there. So, anyways, for the following, I'd show up there every other week or something like that, and it was going pretty good. But again, somebody else shows up, I would be moved on.
Right.
So finally, one day, I was there, and a guy shows up, and he's a bit of kind of a noxious character. And I go to pack up my stuff, and the other artists say, no, 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 you're staying. He's got to go. I went,
Oh.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. I finally made some sort of, pass the grade to some degree. Well, they told the bloke, no, sorry, mate, you have to go. He wasn't going to have it. He was pissed. He was not going to have it. And so he said, well, screw you. And so he started to set up his,
Oh.
his cartoons and get ready to go. And he got a customer. And
Right.
he's drawing the customers you would do, taking, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes.
Mm.
And finally, when he's about ready to sign his name to and give it away, one of the other um, artists there walks over to him, to his drawing, and pours a cup of coffee on the drawing
Oh my God.
and says, you can
Devilish.
stay here all day long, but you're never going to finish a
Oh,
portrait."
wow.
And so then he walks. So this was the heavies. This is the cartoon heavies, and
Wow.
this is a quick sketch of the scenario. So
I love that. Oh my
that's funny.
God.
Yep.
That's intense.
Part-
I mean, there's unions and there's unions. I mean, that's that's the
And that's
mafia.
right.
That's incredible. Wow.
That's right.
What a
Yeah.
ballsy. I mean, the square up in Montmartre, I think that is unionized now. You can't
Oh
just
yeah.
go and set up there. Like you have to have a
Ah. Okay.
license and be part of some kind of union, I think. And
Right. Wow.
I mean, it was at one point. It still is. Maybe it is. Um, but yeah, the coveted, spots, the best positions, are earned over the years of where
Right.
you can sit and all that kind of stuff. Wow, that's tipping coffee on someone. I mean, that's
That is that.
that's a
That is.
ballsy move. Wow. I mean, that's a lot. I noticed, by the way. Hi, Anne. Anne Telnis is in the chat.
Oh,
She's
hey,
saying
Ann, good to
hello.
hear from you. Glad you're here.
Our friend Anne. Yeah. I
Also has
actually
a
just
great Substack.
realized she does. If anyone hasn't subscribed to Cal or Anne's Substack, please. Anne Telnay's Open Windows and Cal Draws the Line on Substack.
Al draws
Please
the
subscribe
line.
to their Substacks.
I'd love to
Um,
have you. It'd be fun to have you.
yeah, yeah. Everyone, you know what I love about your Substack, if I can, is
Yeah,
that you go behind the scenes a bit. You sort of give us a bit of a peek behind the curtain on.
yeah.
And it's my favorite thing in the world. I mean, I try and do it sometimes with my Substack, is kind of show you the work or the workings. Show your how you got there and the process. I really like seeing or reading about your thought process behind your cartoons. You do
Oh,
really well in that in your Substack.
well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I love it is to have a connection with your subscribers. When
Yeah,
you work on a newspaper, it's like you're sending your stuff off into the ether. But with the
yeah.
Substack, people are giving up their emails.
Mm,
They've given up their time. You want to make their click worthy.
sure.
And so you put that extra effort in, and then of course people respond to you and so on. So I have a great allegiance, or I feel very, very, honored by all of the people who have opted to join me. And I'm
Yeah.
Team Cal. Join Team
Team
Cal.
Cal. Team Cal, yeah. I think
Yeah.
newsletters, as you say, I have the same feeling. I want to respect people's time and attention, and I want to make it worth their while.
Yeah.
I don't want to abuse that relationship. I bumped into a cartoonist this morning, Tom Fishburne, who does is a cartoonist who has a very big mailing list. Always has been doing weekly newsletters about marketing. Cartoonist is his company. He
Oh,
does
marketing.
speaking
Okay.
and yeah, yeah. Similar to trying to think who there's a couple that got Mark who am I thinking of? There's a few cartoonists who have a niche, sort of business cartoons and marketing cartoons and things like
Right.
that. It's right what you know. If that's your area of expertise, do cartoons on that.
Right.
Yeah, and he was saying that loyal relationship goes way back for him, with all of his subscribers. He really has these long term sort of readers that he's kind of got this parasocial relationship with.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And half the time, I don't know how people find me. I mean,
Mm,
you at the beginning when you start a Substack, mine only has been going on for about 2 months.
right.
You invite people who you know and say, "Come on board." Um,
Yeah.
but then it gets to a point where you're getting a lot more referrals through Substack that people have somehow stumbled
Mm,
upon you, or that
yeah.
you've been recommended or something. And I really love that, and I encourage anybody who's found me, let me know how you found me and spread the word.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I recommend you, and I always like to find people whose work is that I enjoy, that I read, so that if I recommend it, it's something that I would be, keen to subscribe to as well. And yeah, I think that's the thing I like about Substack. It sort of goes back to the old web ring idea of once you subscribe to one person, they might refer you to someone else that you might like that's of a similar style or ilk, or there's a community, it feels, around it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
well, Cal, it's 1 o'clock. We've been
Oh
we've
my
been
gosh.
scribbling and yapping for an hour. I wanted to, just before we go, I wanted to uh, ask if there's anything that you would like people to know about apart from your Substack. Obviously, everyone should subscribe to your Substack,
Yeah.
to Cal Draws the Line. But I know you have collections of books. You have you're often speaking, from time to time. So what have you got coming up? What should people know about?
What do they know? Well, I've got my camera's just on here. So hold on. There you go. Um, Yeah, I got a couple of things. First of all, I got my book, the same the same book that you had there. I'll see if I can find a copy right here. There
There
we
is
go.
one.
Double. You can get two for the price of one. Okay. Yeah. So you
Can
can
they
get
buy
that
that
at my
directly from
website.
you? Okay.
No, go to CalTunes, easy
Okay.
CalTunes, CalTunes.com, and you'll see, more background on me. Some of the cartoons in the portfolio aren't quite as up to date, but it's really worth having a look. Instagram is a great way. You can see a lot of, just want to see cartoons. You can follow me there. It's CalTunes one. But the Substack to me is the most interesting because you can have the cartoons and then you have this conversation you can have too. So that's really great. And a couple of things that if you're in the Baltimore area, I'm having an
Mm,
exhibition of cartoons in January, late January,
great.
at
Yes.
the Manor Mill in Moncton. I will put that on uh, my Substack, so be more
Okay.
close to time. And then
Yeah.
I'm also, doing a special event for paid subscribers in
Mm,
a couple of weeks, where we're having a town hall, and that's going to be super fun. So if you become a subscriber, that will be a fun thing that you can do. And then this is long way off, guys. Long way off. Get your calendars out. 2028, my
yeah.
50th anniversary at The Economist, I've started conversations with museums to have a 50-year retrospective that hopefully
Wow.
will tour. So keep your eyes, your pens, your ears open for that great opportunity.
I love that. I'm in awe of the fact that you've been doing this for so long and so
Mhm.
consistently. Not only, like you said, your batting average.
Mhm.
It's higher than most, and I'm in awe of your work and of you as a person. Truly, it's an honor to get to talk to you, but also just to know you. So,
Yeah,
thank you.
I
And
appreciate that,
Caltoons, is
buddy.
it Caltoons at Substack.com?
Yeah, that's Substack.com.
Okay,
Join the
Cal.
party,
Okay.
and we're going to have some fun. And I look forward to seeing you, Jason. Next time we get to New York, I'd love to see one of your shows.
Absolutely.
How much fun would
I'll
that
put you
be?
on the door. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone who does want to come to a big one in October during New York Comic Con, on the Saturday of New York
Oh,
Comic Con, October the
oh,
11th, we're doing Union Hall, big
oh,
special show with cartoonists who are in town for Comic Con. So it's going to be a big
wow.
one. Yeah,
And it said
at Union
you're
Hall.
you're going to be one of the performers at that show. Are
Yeah, and
other
the artist
cartoonists going to be
drawing. Yeah.
performing?
Yeah. So I draw and I host sometimes and do a spot. And yeah, so we'll see.
Great, awesome,
Yeah.
buddies. Bravo.
Thank you again, Cal. Thank
Thanks,
you so
everybody.
much. And thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll see you next week. Yes, this hour did go fast. All right. Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Cheerio. Bye now.